Take a look around you. We are surrounded by stuff. Our furniture, our clothes, our electronics, appliances in the house, decorations on the walls, lights on the ceiling. And the truth is, we've bought most of it. Very few of us went down to the workshop to make a table, or went down to the sewing machine to sew something to wear. We have bought what we have. And the truth is, we're unwilling to give it up. Our society likes to have its stuff. Think about your favorite things. If you had to go without your cell phone for a couple of days, or your Xbox, or whatever your favorite piece of material may be, you'd be upset, as we all would. Well, this really only became true very recently during a time period called the Industrial Revolution. For a very long time, we would have had very little in our homes, everything we needed and maybe a couple of luxury items. This is all going to change thanks to a couple really very simple inventions. The Industrial Revolution, time period in which mechanical power replaced human or animal power in producing and transporting goods. And we saw two early changes. First change, something we called a water-powered mill. It was a really very simple machine, but for the people of that time, it had to be like what nuclear energy is to us today. Then the steam engine. And the steam engine may be the most important invention up until the early 20th century. The steam engine will change people's lives in ways they never could have imagined. This is your basic water mill. Take a look at the huge wheel on the side of the building. You would build this next to some source of running water, a river, a stream, something like that. The water hits the wooden paddles, turns the wheel. The wheel would then turn various gears on the machinery inside the building. This made life a lot easier. After all, your only other choices were to do it by hand or to hitch up some animals before this. But it had a lot of limitations and wouldn't allow us to do all the things that we would eventually need to do in society. The steam engine would. The steam engine is a really simple machine, but it changes everything about the way we produce things and the way we live. If you take a look, down on the bottom we have a coal fire. Above the fire we have water. As you guys all know, you heat water long enough, you get steam. When the steam pressure would build up, it would go through the valve, and it would drive up the piston on the right-hand side of your screen. As the steam cooled, the piston would come back down. If you take a look at the other side, we have a second piston hooked up to sort of a gear system here. That piston could drive anything. The wheel on a train, factory machinery. Even in some cases, wheels have produced other kinds of power that we'll talk about later in this unit. This very simple invention will totally change the way we live. Advantages of steam. Number one, far more powerful than water. With water power, you were limited to how fast the river or the stream was running. With steam power, you were limited only by what the metal you were building it out of could handle. Could be located away from the body of water. You didn't have to put your factory on the river. As long as you had a steady water source, you could have steam power. And could be used in any kind of engine. And again, we will see steam engines in just about everything you can imagine during this time period. It really won't change until we get to the gasoline-powered engine and the widespread use of electricity. So what does the Industrial Revolution do? Why do we call it a revolution? Basically because it changed everything about our lives. Production, how we make things. Transportation, how we move things around. Communication, because we can move things farther. Now we have to be able to communicate faster. 6 weeks for a letter is not going to do it. We got to be able to communicate within hours at the worst. Ideally, instantly. And we'll get to that. Effects on society. Home and family life. The biggest thing is it separates work from home. Used to be home and work were together. People getting up and going to work simply didn't happen. Now, with the factories, you're going to leave your home to go to work. For children, children used to be raised in the family enterprise. That's not going to happen anymore. We're going to see the growth of childhood and the growth of schools. Gender roles. Used to be there was men's work and women's work. That line is going to blur, although we'll see it well into the 20th century. Urbanization. Got to have a lot of people by your factory. So what we see is cities spring up, and they grow remarkably fast. And immigration. Word got out. There were jobs in America, and more importantly, there was money to be made in America. And people came in numbers the world has never seen to try to take advantage of that. The Industrial Revolution pairs up with a second kind of revolution called the market revolution. A market, of course, where you buy and sell things. What we see here is people start to buy and sell the goods they need with money rather than make the goods for themselves. Now that should sound very familiar to all of you. But this is something that's only about 130, 140, 150 years old. This pairs up with what we call free enterprise or capitalism. People produce goods or go to work to make a profit or to make money for themselves. My motivation to work is that I get a paycheck. My motivation to invent the iPod is that it's going to bring a lot of money to me and the people that work with me. We see the rise in people called entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is somebody that opens a business in order to make a profit. This has always existed, but we see it on such a large scale that we call it the market revolution. Why did it happen here? 3 reasons. First of all, the United States had all the natural resources we needed. Remember, we are a huge country. So rather than have to import the oil, the coal, the iron, the wood, all those other kinds of things, we already had them. We just had them moving throughout the country. Secondly, a large workforce. The United States had a huge population compared with the rest of the world. And it will keep getting bigger throughout the late 1800s, early 1900s. Finally, attitude. The United States was founded by people who took a chance to make a new and better life. That attitude continues through the 1800s, through this time period. Also, business was considered to be below certain classes of people in Europe. We didn't have that attitude here. Any way of being successful was viewed as a good thing by most people in the United States. So if that meant getting into professions that would be beneath others throughout the world, we were willing to do that. This all happened fast. Within 60 years, the United States went from an agricultural nation to an industrial one. So in other words, if we went back to somewhere around the 1840s, most of us would live on farms, and we would produce food primarily for ourselves. In the South, of course, that was a little bit different. By the turn of the century, the year 1900, we were looking at most people in America living in cities and involved in industry in one way or another. This progress had to be amazing to the people who saw it. Imagine watching your town go from a series of 2, maybe 3 at the most story buildings to skyscrapers. Imagine going from a time where you couldn't go more than 10 miles from your home in a day to going on a train at 55 miles in an hour. But with this speed came problems. We had problems in the cities. We had pollution. We had crime. We had alcohol abuse. We had problems in the factories. People were dying on a weekly or even daily basis in some cases. People were being maimed for life, losing limbs. We had children working in the factories in jobs that an 8, 9, 10-year-old should never have. And those problems are going to be a great challenge as we move forward.